In this video, we're going to be making our own homemade Nest video home surveillance system. And so I bought a camera, a little USB webcam on Amazon for $7. I bought a Potato, which is essentially a Raspberry Pi clone, for $40. And so for 47 bucks, I have a working little camera right here that you can see right there is coming through pretty quickly and easily. So really nice setup. You can set these things to be motion activated. So basically you're developing all of your own software and you have control over all the parameters that are going on here, which I think is excellent. And yeah, so, you know, on your Raspberry Pi 3, I'm using a little micro USB cable for power. I'm also having this hooked up to a Ethernet cable to our local network so that we can SSH to it to actually install and configure the software, as well as get a web page. So in my case, this thing's obtained its own IP address that we can go to on port 8765 to view the MotionEye software. And from there, we are also using this little USB port, one of the 4 USB ports on our Raspberry Pi to connect our USB webcam to. So with all this stuff, we have this guy working just like that, which is awesome. I'm gonna take you guys through how I did this. It did take me quite a while. There's a lot of little pitfalls, but stay tuned and we will get started. Alright guys, so to kick things off here, we are going to be loading the Ubuntu image onto our particular mini computer. This could be a Raspberry Pi, or Orange Pi, Banana Pi, whatever. In my case, I'm using the Potato from Libre Computer. So I've gone to their website and this is the product page for this particular model. And if you click on downloads, you can see that they've got different images here. The one that I'm going to be going with is Ubuntu. And they give you this little link here where you can download stuff. I want to make very clear here that all these images can have different default credentials for the built-in username and password. So in my case, it's telling me right now that the username and password for this image, in order for me to log into it, are Ubuntu for both. And so I'm going to click on this guy, and it's going to present me with all these different .xz image files. And something that's really important to note here is that all of these correspond to different CPUs that go onto, or these systems on a chip that go onto these actual things. So you want to make sure you pick the right one depending on what model you have. In this case for the Libre computer. And so this one corresponds to the one for S905X. And so you can see that some of these have that S905X in them. I've already downloaded this. And so I'm going to open up my downloads folder right now. So just give me 1 second. And so it comes in this .xz file. You right click this and you're going to use 7-zip to turn this into a .img file. And then once it's all loaded up in the img file, I'm going to use Balena Etcher in order to convert, or to take that image file and then put it onto the micro SD card that we will be putting into this guy. So I'm just going to run the Balena Etcher app. this is another open source thing that works perfectly fine for our purposes. So I'm going to flash from a file. I'm going to choose that 2 GB Ubuntu 22.04 version image, and we're going to select our target. In this case, it's going to be that 32 gig micro SD card that I've already chosen. I'm going to select it, and then we're going to click on flash. And this can take some time because it is a fairly big file. So just give it 1 moment. Okay, and you'll see it give you some windows. You don't actually need to do anything at this point. You can see that in the background it is actually proceeding with the flashing. So I'm just going to let this thing finish doing that, and then we'll come back to the action. All right, so in my case it is saying that something went wrong, which is unfortunate, but I'm going to assume that that went okay. So I'm going to, not currently seeing that drive, but I'm going to eject it and plug it into this guy, and then we'll see if we are able to get this thing to show up on our network. So give me 1 moment. Okay, so I've got the micro SD card. Going to pop that guy right into there, and then I'm going to also take the micro USB cable and give this guy some power. So y'all see that light up. And then I'm also going to plug in an Ethernet cable to that Ethernet jack so that we can begin to have a network connection on this guy as well. So give it just a moment and hopefully our image is okay. And this can take some time, so I'm just going to let this thing boot up, and you know you're looking good if you're getting some lights coming on that Ethernet port. If no lights are coming up, it can mean that you might have a corrupted image. For whatever reason, Belena didn't like the flash job that was done on this guy, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is, while we're waiting, I'm going to go to my router, which in this case is tplinkwifi.net, and I'm going to authenticate to that. And in my case, I'm going to click on this wired clients right here, and you can see that it is now identifying our little Ubuntu mini PC now with this IP address, which is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this IP address. I'm going to open up PuTTY. I'm going to paste this bad boy in. You can also save this. I'll call it like Ubuntu mini PC, and just save that so I don't have to remember it. Click on open. We're going to say it's okay that there might be a man-in-the-middle attack. And so this is the part where it's really important that we remember those credentials. So remember, it was all lowercase Ubuntu as the username and lowercase Ubuntu as the password. And that's going to tell us that we have to immediately change the password. So I'm going to, again, tell it the past password and put in a new password. Okay, and then it's going to kick you out. So you have to go back to I'm going to close out that. I'm going to open up PuTTY again, and we're going to open our new connection again. All right, so here we are. And now what we are going to do is we are going to run through the installation instructions for this guy right here. Minimize that. And so the very first thing we want to do is note that we are not currently authenticated as the root user. So what we're going to do is we're going to run the command sudo-i, and that converted us to being the root user now, which is super important during this process because otherwise it will not work. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and run all these commands that they want us to do. So we're going to be running an apt update and apt upgrade. So just let it run its course. It may take some time, so stay tuned. Alrighty, so that took a good while, but now what we're going to do is we're just going to literally run the next command. And it's going to do a reboot also once it finishes, so we will need to re-sign in. So I'm just going to paste this guy in, hit enter, and we'll cut back to the action once it finishes doing all these updates or installs. Alrighty, and so once it finishes doing these installs, it is going to fail in PuTTY because it is doing a reboot right now. So if we look at our little what do we call this thing? The Ethernet port is not blinking, so we have to give it some time before these lights come back on. You start seeing like a little blue light click on. So going to say it's okay, we've just lost our connection here, so I'm going to close this out, and then I'm going to go back to PuTTY, and we're going to reconnect back to our little Ubuntu mini PC. And it might time out because it might still be booting up, so we just got to give it some time. You can also confirm if it's on by going back to our router and just refreshing this page. Okay, we are seeing those two wired clients, which is great. So I'm going to go back to PuTTY again, give this another shot. Logging in as our Ubuntu user. Okay, so that's great. So we've now successfully rebooted, and my PC is having a bit of a hard time keeping up here, but yeah, so we've ran these commands. I'm also going to now install Python. So I'm going to have to switch to the sudo user again. Give this another shot. Alrighty, so Python has just been finished installing, and specifically we're going with Python version 2. We're now going to also copy this other script and run it. Okay. And this is so that we can get pip installed on this machine. And all these commands are going to be listed on that GitHub article, so you guys can follow along. And we just keep on chugging along here, installing all these prereqs. Alrighty, so we've just finished installing those guys, and now we're going to just copy paste this next line. Okay, and now we finally get to the part where we install MotionEye itself, because there's a ton of dependencies, but if you made it this far, keep chugging along, you're almost there. We're going to paste in that. We're going to install the MotionEye Python module with pip2 and just let it do its business. And it's also going to realize that there's some dependencies for it, so it's just going to download those as well and run them. Alrighty, so now we have successfully installed these, the MotionEye module itself for Python. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run this command to make a directory for containing the config files for it. And one thing I want to call out is when you run this copy command, if you have not ran this these series of commands as the, if you have not run these series of commands as the root user, you will get an error at this point saying it cannot locate that file. So just make extra super sure that you have ran sudo-i before you do this, otherwise you will get issues. So in my case, I'm just going to again copy this command, and my computer is really slow right now, but it's okay. So that command worked as we expected it to, and I'm sorry it's getting near the bottom of the screen, but we're going to make another directory for additional stuff for the actual media that we want to save. And we're going to just run this other copy command there. You can also just copy all these guys. Awesome. Okay, and then because we are using Python 2 and we need to upgrade it, we will just run this command as well. And this is going to just tell pip to upgrade the MotionEye package. And it's pretty quick and easy. So now that we have done all of that prep work, we are almost there. So what we can do now is this guy is all ready to go. So we're going to open up a new page. And this is the part where it's really important to remember that IP address for your little Raspberry Pi or whatever you're installing this on. I'm going to copy this guy. I'm going to go to this web page, and specifically you're going to do :port 8765, because this is the address of the MotionEye web server that's running on your network. So just like that, it's going to take us to this page. So the username by default is admin, all lowercase, and there's no password. And so we're just going to click on login. And now is the really, really cool part, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a USB webcam that we have, bought this on Amazon for $7 whole, and I'm going to plug it into one of these USB ports. Any of them will do. So just plug in this bad boy. And now what's going to happen is I'll just put that camera at a reasonable, unflattering angle. And then I'm going to click on this button right here to add a camera. And so basically what you see is all the cameras that it's seeing. The V4L2 refers to USB cameras, your specific camera. Like if it's a Logitech camera, it might show up as something different, so just Google whatever specific type of camera you're going with. But I'm going to choose this one, and then I'm also going to say we're going to do this like integrated camera thing, click OK. And if this isn't working, it's really easy to just do trial and error, because you'll see this thing pop up, and right now you can see how awful the video quality is. So that's really not fun. But what we're going to do is I'm going to scroll down and change the resolution, and also change this frame rate. You can do something like 15, and then there's also video streaming here that you will need to update. So like if your frame rate on your actual camera itself is like 15, then you're going to want this to be that as well. And then also reducing your streaming quality can really help improve this thing. So I'm just going to apply these settings, and then you are seeing that it's refreshing this. So you're gonna have to do some fiddling to make this thing work. I'm still getting some weird artifacts on this camera, but you know, it's a little bit faster at picking up what's happening. So I'm going to reduce the video resolution here again down to 640 by 480, and hopefully this gets us some decent video quality, or better than what we had. But yeah, so now you can see two of me, which is pretty cool. But yeah, you can see that it's all coming up on the camera, and I just think it's really, really cool stuff. You know, just can have your own setup like this with your own personal cameras and own all this stuff on your own. So if you made it this far, great work. I know this wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me. It took me a long time to figure out. But just following the instructions and starting from an Ubuntu base image for me was really the most important part of getting this whole thing to work. And I do want to call out also that if you are running this on a Raspberry Pi or Banana Pi or Orange Pi or you know, whatever, I do highly recommend using some heat sinks, and that's because video streaming does use a fair amount of compute power and memory. So if you feel these things, they actually get pretty hot. So just if you plan on running this camera like 24/7 or something, you do want to make sure you've got adequate cooling, because that's how you can improve the lifespan of your system. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Congratulations again on getting it to work, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you guys next time, and be well.